Drone denial operators are extremely important for any defensive lineup, and they are arguably essential due to how important droning is for the attack. Seeing how important these operators are, you probably want to know which one is the strongest for the job. So in today's video, I'll be going through the three main drone denial operators, those being Mute, Mozzie, and Solis, and rating them out of 10 in 4 key categories. The categories are gadget, loadout, secondary gadget, and versatility, same as usual. Then at the end of the video, I'll be adding up their scores to come to a verdict. So make sure you watch until the end to find out who is the best drone denial operator. Now, the first operator I want to discuss, since he came with the base game, is Mute. Mute's gadget is his signal disruptors. These are small jammers that can be placed around the map that jam any electronic utility that comes into their radius. These include things like drones from the attack, any sort of breaching utility, and pretty much anything with an electronic signal. This makes Mute one of the strongest operators in the game for stopping the attack's intel game. With the right placement of his jammers, he can completely shut down the attackers from getting their drones anywhere near the bomb site. And considering how important and fundamental droning is for the attack, this makes Mute's gadget already extremely strong, but you can also use his gadget to deny walls. This is something that no other operator in this video can do. However, I will admit that Mute's jammers are pretty mediocre at this, and the reason for that is because his jammer's radius isn't that big. So when he places his jammers up against a reinforced wall, all the attackers really have to do is put their hard reach utility on the far sides of a wall or on the top of a wall to completely avoid Mute's jammers. But they do work in very niche situations for this purpose. And another added benefit on top of everything else I've discussed when it comes to Mute's jammers is the fact that they can counter Dokubi's calls and Deimos, which both of those attackers are extremely influential in ranked right now, and they're arguably some of the most annoying attackers to deal with. So being able to counter them is huge. However, Mute's jammers does have one huge downside, and that is the fact that their radius is extremely small. This is what causes them to suffer when being used to deny walls, and it also holds them back in their drone denying capabilities, because it prevents you from putting Mute's jammers out of harm's way. Because if you put them far enough away from a doorway to where they're difficult to be shot, you run the risk of drones being able to drive by them. But outside of that small downside, his gadget is extremely huge because it counters one of the most important aspects of the attack. And so for that reason, his gadget is going to be getting a 10 out of 10 in this category. Now, moving past Mute's gadget, we can now discuss his loadout. Mute comes equipped with the M590 shotgun and the MP5K as his two primary options. And for his secondary options, he has access to the SMG11 and the P226 handgun. The M590 shotgun and SMG11 combo is by far the most popular loadout choice for Mute, and that's for obvious reasons. It allows him to be an absolute dominant force in close range, and he gets the added benefit of having that shotgun to create head holes or rotates for his team. However, the MP5K is still a really solid weapon choice on the defense, and while the P226 isn't an amazing handgun, it still gets the job done. And while the P226 does get outclassed by its SMG11 counterpart, it's still a solid option compared to other handguns out there. So for all of those reasons, he's going to be getting a 10 out of 10 in the loadout category. Now moving on to Mute's secondary gadgets, at the time of recording, he has access to the bulletproof camera and the nitro cell. The nitro cell is by far the most popular choice for Mute, and that's because it can get him a free pick if used right, but the bulletproof camera is still a really strong secondary gadget, don't get me wrong. It's just that the nitro cell is so strong for its ability to potentially deny a plant or to pick up free kills that it's just a no-brainer to pick it over the bulletproof camera. So because Mute has access to the nitro cell, he is going to be getting a 9 out of 10 in the secondary gadget category. However, since the bulletproof camera is somewhat lacking compared to other options out there, I couldn't justify giving him the perfect 10 out of 10 score. Now moving on to the final category, we have versatility, and Mute is an absolute powerhouse in this category. That is because he is not map dependent, which is pretty much the case for every operator in this video, but he also has other benefits, which is the fact that he can be used for a wide range of different jobs. You can set up his Mute jammers in an area where your roamers are at, so that way you can shut down any drones from figuring out their location. You can set up your Mute jammers around the bomb site to stop the attackers from getting any drones into the site. You can use his jammers to deny walls in a pinch, and you can use his gadget to counter popular roam clearing operators, like I mentioned earlier, those being Dokubi and Deimos. And he also has the added benefit of having very few counters. The only real significant ones are Thatcher and maybe Twitch, depending on how you position your Mute jammers. So for all of those reasons, he's going to be getting a 10 out of 10 in the versatility category, making his overall score a 39 out of 40. Almost the best score you can possibly get. Now that we wrapped up Mute, we can now discuss Mozzie, which he's going to have a hard time holding up to Mute, but I still think he does a pretty good job. Mozzie's gadget is his pests. These little things can be deployed on pretty much any surface around the map, and when a drone comes in proximity of them, his pests will pounce, hacking the camera and switching it over to the defensive side. This allows Mozzie to just outright deny drones from the attack, and he also has the added benefit of giving his team more cameras on top of that. And in specific cases like when the enemy team is bringing a Twitch or a Brava, you can even get a drone with an ability and use it against the attack. This makes Mozzie extremely strong for aiding in a roam because he can set up his pests around the area where he's roaming or where his teammates are roaming, and he can slow them down or even stop them from droning out the roamers. And then if he gets control of a drone, he can then use it to gather info on the attack and where they're pushing from, or he can set them up on a flank or something like that. However, Mozzie does have three pretty significant downsides. His pests have a super small radius just like Mute has, except even smaller, and because of that they have the additional downsides of being easily shot, and they also warn drones, which means that the chance of you actually hacking a drone if they're paying attention is pretty slim. Overall, his gadget is still a solid 7 out of 10 because of their ability to slow down or even deny the attacker's drone work. Now moving on to Mozzie's loadout, this is probably most people's favorite part about him. Mozzie has access to the P10 Roni and the Commando 9 as his two primary options, and then on top of that he has the SDP 9mm handgun as his only secondary option. The P10 Roni has a pretty fast fire rate, but it has the downsides of having a low damage and low magazine capacity, and then the Commando 9 has slightly higher damage and a significantly higher magazine capacity, but it suffers from a slower fire rate. Both of these weapons are solid choices and they both have their own disadvantages and advantages, but compared to other options on the defense they don't really stand out, especially considering that they have no magnification sights available. And then to go along with this, Mozzie doesn't really have a great secondary choice. All he really has access to is a mediocre pistol. So because of that, he's going to be getting a 7 out of 10 in the loadout category. Not bad by any means, but his loadout definitely isn't amazing. Now moving on to the secondary gadget category, Mozzie at the time of recording has access to a nitro cell and barbed wire. For Mozzie's specific role, this is probably the two best options he could have. The nitro cell is extremely strong for helping him deal with a shield operator trying to push him while he's roaming, and it's also extremely strong for being able to potentially pick up frags on the attack when they're starting to rush him. But his second option, being barbed wire, is also extremely strong because he can use them on his roam to cover his flanks or to also cover staircases nearby, and he can also just put them down around the bomb site since barbed wire is such a strong secondary gadget right now after the recent buff. So because of that, Mozzie has to get a 10 out of 10 in the secondary gadget category. I think anything lower than that would be unjustified. Now moving past the secondary gadgets, we can now discuss the final category, versatility. Just like we discussed with Mute, Mozzie does have the benefit of not being map or bomb site dependent, which helps him in this category a lot, but he also has the added benefit of having a extremely versatile gadget that can be used for slowing the roam clear, denying drones around the bomb site, and even giving his own team more intel. And just like we discussed with Mute, he has very little counters. However, the one downside that Mozzie does have is that in any given round, whether he's roaming or playing around the bomb site, he can only deny 3 drones in a round, which it means at most in any given round he's denying close to a fifth of the attacker's drone game. This isn't nearly as significant as someone like Mute. However, considering how easy and quick his pests are to set up and how useful they can be in any given round, I still think he deserves a 9 out of 10 in the versatility category. Not as high as Mute, but still very good. This leaves Mute with an overall score of 33 out of 40. A really solid score, but definitely not beating Mute by any means. Now moving on to the final operator of the video, we have Solis. Solis's gadget is the Spec IO sensor. Basically what this gadget is its IQ scanner on the defense. So anytime Solis activates her gadget, she can see any forms of electronic utility through walls. This means that she can see attackers sitting on their drones, she can see the drones themselves, she can see flank watch utility like claymores or air jabs, and she can even see Thermite placing his charges down. This makes Solis an extremely strong asset for her team for gathering intel, and more specifically, it makes her amazing for fighting drones while roaming. This is why Solis always tops everyone's lists for roamers in Siege. Her ability to see all drones through walls makes it very hard for the attackers to catch her off guard, because they can never place a drone on her that she doesn't know about. And on top of that, she can use that information she's getting from her gadget to figure out where the attackers are pushing her from and then prepare for it. Additionally, late in the round, if Solis absolutely has to, she can use her ability from below the bomb site to deny the plant. And this is because Solis's gadget can also see the diffuser through walls, which can allow her to walk up under the planter and just shoot them through the floor. Additionally, her ability to see claymores, like I mentioned earlier, makes her a perfect candidate for runouts. She can activate her ability, check for any utility on the runout, and then if there's nothing there, she can just immediately shoot open the doorway and run out. And the attackers will have very little time to react, and she can be 100% confident that there's not going to be anything stopping her from pulling off that run out. However, Solis's gadget does have two downsides, and that is the fact that its radius is extremely diminished after the new operation, and also that its cooldown is significant. Having to wait 10 seconds is a long time, especially if you're trying to deny the plant. So these two downsides do hurt her score significantly, but considering how strong being able to see electronic utility through walls is for a defender, I have to still give her an 8 out of 10 in this category, despite all the downsides I mentioned. Now moving on to Solis's loadout, she has access to the P90 SMG and the ITA-12L shotgun as her two primary options, and for her secondary options, she has the SMG-11. Now this means that Solis has the choice between the amazing P90, which has a high fire rate and a significantly big capacity, or the ITA-12L and SMG-11 combo, which I've discussed multiple times in the past as being really solid. The reason why the shotgun SMG-11 combo is so good is because the SMG-11 is pretty solid at medium and close range. The shotgun gives you an even higher chance of winning gunfights in close range, and it also has the added benefit of making rotates and stuff like I mentioned earlier with Mute. And on Solis specifically, the shotgun has the added benefit of allowing Solis to shoot someone through the floor while they're planting much more consistently. So no matter where you go with Solis's loadout, it's extremely strong, and so for that reason, I'm going to be giving her a 10 out of 10 in this category. Now, the same thing can't be said about Solis's secondary gadgets. After the release of Operation New Blood, Solis's secondary gadgets were changed around, and now she has access to proximity alarms and the bulletproof camera. As we discussed earlier with Mute, the bulletproof camera is still really solid, and it provides her team with pretty solid intel. And the same thing can be said about proximity alarms. They can provide your team with vital information on where the attackers are pushing from, so that way, no matter what, the attackers can't catch you off guard. However, in the context of Solis's gadget, both of these secondary gadgets don't really help her that much. If you don't know, before Operation New Blood, Solis had access to impact grenades, which was extremely huge for allowing her to pull off runouts with her gadget or to deny the plant from below with her gadget. And now that she doesn't have access to that anymore, her kit is suffering. But proximity alarms and bulletproof cameras, like I said, are still solid. So because they're not horrible on the surface, I'm going to be giving her a 6 out of 10 in the secondary gadget category, which is slightly above average, but they're still not as good as they could be. Then moving on to the final category, we have versatility. And this is a category that Solis is amazing in. Just like I mentioned multiple times before, drone denial operators have the benefit of not being map dependent, which already gives Solis a leg up in this category. But on top of that, she happens to have one of the best gadgets in the game for roaming. This allows her to be useful in pretty much any round you pick her in, because you're always going to be getting utility out of her by just running around the map and calling out the information you get off your gadget to your team. And then on top of her gadgets, she has access to an amazing loadout for taking those gunfights that she's going to be doing when she's roaming, and for taking advantage of her gadget. The only real issue with Solis when it comes to the versatility side of things is the fact that her secondary gadgets don't really mesh with the rest of her kit, but considering she's so good in every other aspect, I think I still have to give her a 10 out of 10 in the versatility category. She's definitely one of the most versatile operators in the game, and you should still be picking her a ton despite the nerfs to her in this recent patch. And after adding up all the scores, Solis is left with a score of 34 out of 40. And honestly, amazing score. The only thing really holding her back was the fact that her secondary gadgets really were not good, and the fact that the nerfs in Operation New Blood did hit her pretty hard. Now to answer the question you clicked on the video for, who is the best drone denial operator? And with the scores tallied up, Mute is the clear winner with a score of 38 out of 40. As always, this video is strictly my opinion, and if you disagree, feel free to leave your opinions in the comments down below. If you enjoyed today's video, I make Siege content just like this twice a week, so go subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter if you don't want to miss the next upload. If you want to watch another video just like this one of VP popping up on your screen right now that I'm sure you all enjoy. I'll see you next time, friends, and peace.